All right, let's do this. I got a good one for you today. This is the title page from a first edition of Through the Looking Glass and What Alice Found There by Lewis Carroll from 1872. A friend of mine owns this book, and while the binding was being repaired, it was still bound, but it was kind of loose, he let me scan the illustrations. Very exciting. John Tenniel. 50 illustrations. Now, let's take a look at one of the illustrations. Here we have the Hatta. Now, this is an illustration, but obviously it's been printed in a book. So Tenniel was an illustrator, and he would draw it, and then the DL brothers would engrave it, and that would be a wood engraving. So this is a drawing on wood, which was then supplementally engraved. But they didn't print the wood blocks. Instead, using a process known as electrotyping, they made a copy of the wood engraving out of copper, and that's what was printed. Now, I want a copy, not the whole print, I just want the Hatta. I just want the Hatter here. I want one beautiful print of the Hatter, and I want it to be a wood block print. I actually want to pull the print. I want to make a plate that I ink up and pull by hand. So to do that, I've got to go through this whole process of really turning this image of a copper plate, of a wood block, of an illustration, back into, well, an illustration. And that illustration is going to have to be pure black and white. No shades of gray, whatever. Now, I mentioned that this was done on a scanner, and the scanner I put it on allows for the pages to go perfectly flat, but only up to 600 dpi, and you'll notice there's a little bit of color noise in here. Now, what that means is that the resolution of the scanner actually isn't as good as the resolution of this print. This print is actually thinner than the resolution of the scanner. But I want to go through the process, and I'm going to record the whole thing, and it's going to be from print to print. You ready? Let's have some fun. And hopefully, I don't have to mispronounce anybody's name anymore. Sorry about that. I'm really bad about pronunciations. So the first thing I'm going to do is, of course, I've got this backed up already. Let me close that file. I don't need that one here. Let me come over here and save this as Hatta, because that's what he is in this book. And I'm going to save it as a Photoshop document. Beautiful. Now, I don't need anything but this part of the print. So I'm going to crop right out. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to crop. So this is what I'm going to be working with. Now, I'll be honest with you, I'm going to get rid of everything but him in a second, but we're going to leave it all for now just to make my life just a little bit easier. All right, and save that. And next thing I want to do is I want to make it bigger. It's a little bit challenging. You know what? I'm going to recrop it. I'm going to go all the way in. I'm just going to say, I want to build my composition right now. I'm not fixing the whole image. That's not what this project is. This project is me making this print. So I already backed up the original image. So there we go. This is what I'm going to be working with. What do I have in terms of quality? If I click on image size here, what we're going to realize is oh my God, I've got literally no data. 1 inch by 2 inch at 600 dpi. There's nothing here. There's barely 1,000 pixels here. How am I going to restore an image where there's so little data? And the answer is carefully. So, first things first, how tall do I want it to be? Now, I like my compositions to be 8 by 10. Now, the reason I like them to be 8 by 10 is because that's the paper I'm going to be putting on. So I'm going to be blowing this up pretty big. The original is 2 by 1.5. I'm blowing it up to 8 by 10. Now, looking at this for a moment, did I give myself enough room? I think I did. So I'm going to say that the height of this is 8. The height of this is 10. That width would be about 6.9. That's pretty good. That'll give me some room to work. And 600 dpi is good, but I found when I'm doing this process that I really like to be working at 900 dpi. And along the way, this is set to automatic. This is going to resample my image, and it's going to try to interpolate and extrapolate and make new data. Interestingly enough, it actually does a pretty good job. If I were to come over here and do hard edges, that just makes literally big blocky areas. If I click bicubic smoothing for enlargement, see the difference that you've got? Preserved details. What does Preserve Details 2.0 look like? Oh, that's an interesting one. Automatic. Now remember, I want high contrast. Which of those is going to give me higher contrast? It's a big important choice right now, because whatever I decide, that is going to make all the difference in the world. So is this better than this? And I want to look at those two little white dots, because those two little white dots are going to stay. So is this one better than this one? I think I'm going to go with the regular Preserve Details. Now in terms of noise reduction, that's an interesting one as well. But I'm not willing to do it. So I'm going to click OK, and I'm going to wait, because Photoshop's going to have a lot of work to do as it tries to interpolate and upscale all of this data. And there it is. Totally upscaled. Beautiful. Now that it's done that, I've got to take a look at what I've got left. Now there is a little bit of futz right there, and I've got to remember, the only thing about this that shouldn't be there is this one line of foxing or blemish, which I'll get rid of shortly. Go to Layers, and we are going to call this my original layer. Always keep an original layer. I'm going to duplicate this layer, and this is going to be my gray copy. It's going to be my first copy. It's going to be the one there. I'm just going to start making this one a little bit grayscale, and now when I did that, you can see it did actually bake that little bit of line in there, but I'll get rid of that a little bit later on. All right, so far so good. Now, let me turn off my original. Let me hit save again. Always keeping things in flow here. Now I'm really trying to figure out what parts of this image am I keeping and what parts am I getting rid of. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a quick wrap around. I'm not going to get anywhere near the image, just to get a sense of what my composition looks like, to see if I truly am happy with what I have selected here. All right, that's the top half. This is that. I'm putting the little negative spaces in so I remember what it is. Oops, what it is that I'm really looking for. That's good. What I like about this composition is there's nothing's obscured. Nothing's in front of the Hatta. What I also like about the composition is that I've opted to get rid of most of the crosshatching, which is great for creating a sense of shading, but a nightmare in terms of getting every line back into this. And then all right, so this is our basic composition. How do we feel about it? Is it going to make a nice print? Would I hang this on my wall? This is going to make a nice composition. Will I hang it on my wall? Will it look good in print? And the answer is, yeah, I think it will. This makes me pretty happy. Please ignore the Windows error messages. Now, I'm going to make a copy of it. This is my paranoia, by the way. This next one, I'm going to look at the contrast, the levels. And what we see here is from pure black to pure white. And if you'll notice, by the way, there is no pure white. Matter of fact, there's about a third of the lightness range. Almost all my highlights are missing. If I bring this up over here, and I bring this over here, I've done nothing destructive to my image, but it does go to show you just how much data is still, there. Obviously, I can make things darker and lighter. The challenge to all this, of course, is that I want to make sure that I get every little nook and cranny of this image. And some lines, which are in the darkness here, those should be white, and those should be white. And other lines, which should be, these lines also should be white. So I really want to bring this range up without losing anything. Take a look. When I bring it up too much, if I bring it up too much, I'll start to delete lines. So let's take a look where the thin black lines are. These are thin, these are thin, these are thin. So I'm going to bring up the lightness until the thin black lines disappear. So where are they disappearing? Well, they're not disappearing in the teacup, and they're not disappearing in the legs or the feet. Matter of fact, that all looks good. They're getting close to disappearing in the hand. The real danger zone in this image is right here in the face. So I'm going to bring it up right to about there, and then I'm going to stop. Because if I bring it up any further, I'm going to lose data that I need. Okay, so I'm going to stop a little bit before there. That helps a bit. Now, the other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to start looking at in here and in here need to be made a little darker before I bring everything else up. But before I do that, it's time to do the fine cutting. Now, when it comes to fine cutting, the goal here is to remove everything that has black in it. I'm not worried about all the gray here, because all that gray here is easily going to vanish when the time comes. Very easy for it to vanish when the time comes. I only am worried about the black lines, the black marks that exist outside of my composition. And those are the ones I need to delete because they are not part of what I'm doing. At the end of the day, this will not turn into a black and white image. This will turn to an image that is pure black and transparent. So all the white you see here is going to end up as transparent anyway. So I'm really not worried about that. I'm only worried about the lines. I'm only worried about that which I'm keeping. And I only worry about the stuff that I'm not keeping if it interferes with that which I'm keeping. But right now, I just want to make sure I don't create any strange awkwardnesses, any strange bites in my composition. The nice thing is that with rare exception, there's almost always a nice space right around where the hatches end, cross-hatching. The problem is if you don't get it right, what you end up getting is you end up getting weird little like divot-y things, almost like strange little things poking out that you'll have to fix later on. Now I'm actually not worried about cutting into the line because I am going to turn this into, there will be no softness to the final line. There'll be a hard edge. So I'm really actually a little more easygoing than not, because a lot of what's going to happen is going to organically smooth out again when I burn it on the laser cutter to create the final block. Isn't that nice? I like that. Oops. All right. So first things first, I'm going to finish cutting around the image. This actually is going to be, this part of this is going to be one of the worst things I have to do. Actually, the little white lines in front of me is the worst things I'm going to have to do. But this is the most meticulous part that I'm not using a tablet for. Eventually, I'll go and grab a tablet, and that'll make my life a little bit easier when I actually end up redrawing the entire image from scratch. And in some ways, I'm not kidding. There's going to be part of this where it's going to feel like I'm literally going over every single line. I'm not actually, by the way. I'm only going to go over certain key lines. Certain lines just won't disappear. The weird part about this is that some of the lines that I'm going to be going over don't exist. You think they exist. A dark gray line that is on top, that stops, but it's on top of a medium gray line may not be noticeable to you until I change the contrast, in which case you're going to go, you just deleted part of the line. No, that part of the line was never there. And then I have to go back and add that part of the line that wasn't really there. So it's a difference between revealing what was there and trying to attempt to look for what would be artist intention. And the artist intention is a really strange one here because, again, you have one person drawing, one person engraving, and then the entire process of turning it into a copper plate. And then, of course, is the copper plate aging well? Was the wood block it was based on engraved well in the first place? There's so many questions about quality that add up, and I'm going to try to delete them all. The funniest part about that is as I try to delete those questions of quality, I will end up adding my own questions of quality in, because I'm not the world's greatest printmaker. I mean, but each one will be organically unique, and that's what's kind of fun about this, is that I get to lay a little bit of claim as a creator on this, because I'm rebuilding the composition, I'm cleaning up the image. I don't have to finish this image. Some of the other ones that I've done, there have been parts of the picture that are literally missing. Queen of Hearts was missing part of her dress. The Knave of Hearts was missing part of his crown. So that one I actually had to do some actual composition of. I don't think I'm going to have to do any building in this. I think I'm just going to have to fill in. The only blanks I'm going to have to fill in are going to be the small ones that were either miscut or wore over time, or they weren't noticed. So I'm going to be using a little bit of logic here. What I love is that when you really get into the groove, you actually don't even think about the picture. I know that sounds like not love of a picture, but when you can edit a photo on a pixel by pixel basis, on a contrast by contrast basis, then you're really just in the zone of the pixels, in the zone of the image, versus trying to build a new composition, which I'm not. Trying to create a new level of something here, which I'm not. All right. This is coming together nicely. You should never say things like that. If you say things like that, bad things happen. Now, the reason I have to go pure black and white is that even though what you see here may look like a shade of gray, that has to do with the way that the ink hit the paper, not the way that the ink was on the plate. The plate literally should only be inking on one two-dimensional surface. There should be no dimensionality to this, and yet, by the way, the lines on the outer part of the plate are lighter than the lines on the inner part of the plate, and that has to do with the way that the plate was printed, the way that the ink was distributed, and the way that things came together. So as I go to do this, I want to make sure that I make something that is pure black, because that's going to be what holds the ink. Anything that is below the black, anything dimensionally that is less than black, that is ramped down, it should, in theory, if I do my job right, not see the ink at all. So it's going to be like mountains and valleys. But you're going to really have these plateaus of black and then these valleys of white, which is going to be what I engrave. So eventually it'll all get reversed in terms of color schema. But it's important to remember that, because if we did do something that was grayscale, I can engrave it and make it visually interesting. I could I could photocopy it, or I could engrave with the shades of gray, but I can't print with the ink blot shades of gray. When I ink up the plate, it's either going to be ink or no ink. So I have to make sure that I build this to be perfectly black and perfectly, well, not black. And I've just come to a really good understanding as to what resolutions work well with my printer with my laser cutter. They kind of call it a laser printer, but it's not. It's a laser cutter. They call it almost like a weird sort of 3D printer, but it's not. It cuts with lasers. And that's what I'm going to do when this is over. I'm going to cut this into a piece of MDF wood, which is really like sawdust and glue. But because there's no real texture to it, it holds up fairly well. Also, it's relatively inexpensive, so that if I make a mistake, I can just make another one. All right, so far so good. You know what I love when I do a restoration like this is you really have to ask yourself, what is causing those misprints? Is it a worn plate because, you know, this is in the 28,000s? Is it a bad printing job? Is it a bad inking job? Is it? And again, so many questions. The reality of it is that none of the answers really matter. What matters is to understand that there may be, it could be that, you know, that book number 1 off the press looked a lot better than book number 28,000, or it could be no, the press was the way it was, and the printer was the way it was, and that's what it is. This is coming together well. Let me hit save. A little bit of paranoia. Never hurts to get paranoid on the save button. Okay. What I also like about doing these internal areas is that once you've cropped a region, you're done with it. Like, you know, like I'm never gonna have to worry about the minutia of whatever that part of the arm was. That's gone now. I'll have to deal with that little bit of a speck in there. Oops. But each time I cut away a piece, that's one less piece I'm gonna have to worry about. Mm-hmm. All right. Oh, I made a mistake. I hate when I do that. All right, not that part of the image. Where should we go instead? Give myself a minute to breathe. All right, let's go between the legs. So the cropping and the deleting really form this part which we're looking at as composition. Now the reason I waited, I could have done it before I upres it. I could have done before I changed baseline level of levels, but it's easier to see what's going on. So I'm not gonna crop a low res image when I have a high res right behind me. It's easier to crop a high resolution image, just like it's easier to contrast a high contrast image. So it seems like I waste resources, but I'm really only just wasting a little bit of my time, but it isn't wasting my time at all. All right, now this shadow here apparently blends in with this foot. Okay. Oops. All right, that works pretty well. Let's do this part of the foot. All right, and a little bit of texture there, but I think it's okay. I think I'll leave that. All right, getting close, getting close. What are we down to? Oh, maybe not that close. All right, let's go around to the jacket. All right, so aha, what do we have? Well, getting close. I keep saying that, and of course I'm not getting. I'm actually getting closer. All right. Never yawn on video. It's contagious. Now, wherever you are, you're gonna yawn. All right, one last part of the hit save, hit save, hit save. All right, now this one's going to be a challenge. Oh, that was right. Don't be afraid to zoom in. All right. All right, those are the trees. Let's see the forest. Now that makes me happy. So that is a print that I can print. Now, I've deleted all this material. How much material did I delete? Well, the answer is, well, let's take a look. Remember, our danger zones are right in here in the face and in this style. So I can bring it up just a little bit before I start to notice it, and that's what I want to do. I don't mind the grays getting lighter. I mind the whites, the lines getting brighter. It looks like it'll work. So I'm gonna hit save, and I'm gonna take a quick break.
And as always, please be sure to like, subscribe, and follow. Ooh, and share. Like, subscribe, follow, and share. Ooh, and comment. Like, subscribe, share, follow, and comment. Yeah, that's right. Do it all. Thank you.